Welcome back to the Deep Digger Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew, my other host right over there.
What's up? It's D. Good to see you again. We're talking NFL draft. But before we do that, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. Drop some comments below. Let us know your thoughts.
And I guess before we get into the draft or anything, we just had to talk Shedeur Sanders because
Yes.
this is a historic draft slide. This is the biggest, I was saying this is the biggest slide I've ever seen, probably in the history of the NFL, when he was in round 3 and he ended up going
Yes.
144th overall. What were the main factors in this?
I mean, it's insane. I think we got to take a step back and acknowledge like how historic of a slide this actually was. I mean, me and you were going back and forth like, oh, is this the biggest slide? Who has had it before? I was thinking Brady Quinn fell all the way to the second round. We looked it up. He only fell to 22nd. Aaron Rodgers, everyone always goes back to, oh, Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be the number one pick in the draft. He ends up going, like 27, 28, still in the first round. Lamar Jackson, they end up going and getting him with the last pick in the first round. I don't think we've ever seen a guy that was projected so highly. He was even money at the start of last year to be the number one pick in the draft this year. That's how Blake. And then he goes out there and he lights it up. I mean, he threw for over 4,000 yards. He threw, I think, 37 touchdowns. And it was just one of those things. Like, I don't know how he fell. So, and I was watching Grab Sheet talk about it. He didn't know either. But yeah, he fell all the way to the fifth round. And it's insane. Um, in your opinion, what are I know they're the factors that I'm thinking of are, okay, apparently the interviews didn't go well. He wasn't working well on the board. You have to factor in like the last name Sanders and what really kind of comes with that in his dad and Coach Prime. In your mind, I guess, what are the factors?
I mean, I think right off the top, you just have to say he wasn't that outstandingly talented. And if he was a slam dunk prospect, we would have seen him go in the first round. We would have seen him go even early second in that Tyler Shuck spot. But he just didn't have anything that jumped off the board for you in attributes as a quarterback. He doesn't have a cannon. He's not the fastest mobile guy. He's accurate. I'll give him that. But yeah, nothing just screams that he's going to have a high ceiling. And so when teams look at that, they're thinking, well, it's always be who you can afford to be. And if this guy is going to be saying that, oh, if you only draft me if you want to change the culture, only draft me if you like dictating where he wants to go, saying that there's teams that he will not even meet with, not meeting with teams outside the top 5. Like, I think realistically his talent didn't back up his ego. And like that's not to say that he can't go out there like he's not a good guy. Like I think he is, he's a kid. I think he is can be a good guy. I just think the ego and the cockiness of the whole draft situation for him leading up and his dad and his name turned a lot of teams off, especially when you're like, well, this guy isn't fucking Andrew Luck.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've seen guys go. I mean, in this draft, we had a guy drafted to the Baltimore Ravens that had multiple SA things over high school and college.
Yeah, but his dad's not going to try to take your job if you don't play him in a year.
I guess, but at the same, like, it's so stupid. I think that realistically, I'm kind of on the Mel Kiper train here. I will get to Mel at another point. I think that he needs to
Disgusting.
retire. Just nobody knows how to evaluate the quarterback in 55 years.
That's fucking wild.
But I think he was he's barking up the right tree at least. I think like realistically, this is a guy that everyone had pegged being the second quarterback in the draft. I mean, realistically, it, some people even liked him a little bit more than Cam Ward. I think everyone knew Cam Ward was going number one. I think people were like flirting with the idea of, hey, if you really want that high ceiling guy, it could be Jackson Dart. I'll even give you that one, right? But to say he's not as good as Tyler Shuck, wrong. To say he's not as good as Dillion Gabriel, wrong. To say he's not as good as Jalen Milrow, wrong. Like, he is a better passer, he is a better quarterback, he is a better processor of offenses than all of those guys, hands down. And to say that nobody should take a flyer on him, uh, why are you taking flyers on Jalen Milroe then? Why are we doing like I just he shouldn't have fell to the 5th round. That's ridiculous.
The reason why no one is taking a flyer on him is exactly what we saw immediately after the draft. They took Dillion Gabriel in the third round. The whole Browns roster now is looking at Shedeur like that's our guy. The whole fan base is looking at Shedeur like that's our guy. When your coach and GM are not even happy that he's in the building because Jimmy Haslam probably forced them to take the pick, you have already your starters, your leaders on your team tweeting at Shedeur like, "Oh, let's get it, let's be legendary." Your fans, he's the number 3 selling jersey right now of the rookies that just got drafted. So if you don't think he's worthy, like gonna be a starter, or you don't want to take a chance on him to see if he turns into a superstar, he's not on my board because all you're gonna get is the distractions, the voices going on in the media, going on in the fans, and it's just gonna be, especially in this situation where Cleveland is dysfunctional, it's just gonna be a wreck.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that was a deciding factor. If I mean realistically, that is something that the Cleveland Browns deal with. Like it's a shit show that they've created. They drafted a guy ahead of him. I think this is if we're gonna get to like the placement of it, I think this is a good spot where honestly, Shedeur probably steps in and could be the starter day one. If we're going to be completely honest, he's going against old Joe Flacco. He's going against Kenny Pickett, who never lived up to the hype. He's going against Dillion Gabriel, who everyone knew is a better quarterback than him coming into it. So, yeah, I think that he can step in and be starter day one. But if that was going to deter you, it's because you don't have a good culture. It's because that you don't have a strong head coach, and it is bull that the Steelers didn't draft him. I think realistically it ended up being good for them because they got a guy that they really like and that I really like in Will Howard. But you're telling me that Mike Tomlin couldn't step in and be like, if they did draft Shedeur in like the 3rd round, he couldn't be like, hey, you know what? We're not gonna have that. He's our backup for now. He's a rookie. We're gonna let him learn. So let's shut down the narrative. Like, if you're telling me he goes anywhere else that has a strong, if he went to Kyle Shanahan wouldn't shut that down. Like, there's places where he could have went and they would have shut that narrative down. So I don't think that's kind of a lame cop out excuse.
I mean, of the teams who he could have started for, though, they're teams that don't have good culture. Like, they don't have the infrastructure in place to handle them. So, I mean, it's a little bit of like, at least they're aware that they weren't going to be able to deal with this whole Shedeur primetime fan situation. I mean, I already see if he went to the Saints, I mean, he's probably starting for them, but I think Kellen Moore is already worried. Like, I need to get this season right because I could be one and done here. The cap is so bad. The situation, I'm already basically in a bad way. So I'm just gonna try to figure it out without all the distractions of
But
Shedeur.
you went for a 26 or 25-year-old guy who had one good year in college out of 7, who has a
No, yeah, I'm
history
not
of injuries.
justifying
Like,
the Tyler
then
Shuck
that's
pick is
dumb. Then
probably
that's dumb.
the
Then
worst
that's
pick in the
dumb.
draft, but I can justify not taking Shedeur number 9. I can.
But you're taking Tyler Shuck. Like, what are we talking
No,
about?
that's an awful pick. That is a terrible pick, but it's not the worst situation if Tyler Shuck does work out. If Shedeur comes in and doesn't work out, or your team is not working out, I mean, I'm already seeing just the Browns dropped a video where the rookies that were picked on day 1 and day 2 were picking their jersey numbers, and they were like talking about it. And your second round pick, Judkins, is saying, "Oh well, if the vet doesn't want number 2, I'll take number 2." He's not even being cocky about it. He's just like, "Oh, I'll take 1 or number 2, whichever he doesn't want." And you have the comments flooded with fans being like, "This fucking bum, it needs to go take a fucking other number because this is reserved for our fucking King Shedeur, blah blah blah, legendary. This fuck, and I'm like, that's your second round pick that your fans are actively shitting on, calling him a fucking loser and a bum, and he needs to get real. And then you have fans going, don't buy Shedeur's jersey. Go to his merch. He's not getting enough money for his contract, so we need to make sure the money goes straight to Shedeur. I'd rather give $100 for a hoodie instead of buy Shedeur jersey so it doesn't go to the NFL. Like the fucking firestorm already on like day 5 of this whole Shedeur experiment. Like, yeah, the Browns are in a fucking mess.
Yeah, and all right, and now let's talk to like the football side of this. I mean, this is or the fit. This is a bad spot for Shedeur, if we're going to be completely honest. He got the worst of both worlds. He got drafted really low, way lower than literally anyone had thought. And on top of that, he still is the savior of Cleveland. He still is expected to step in and be the starter, and people are going to expect him to lift this poverty franchise to a place that they haven't been in like a well over a decade. So I think it's a I think it's such a bad fit for Shedeur. This is again, as I said, the worst of both worlds. What do you think about him going to the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I mean, I hate it. I hate it even more now that Dillion Gabriel was their third pick. They wasted that pick basically because you have to get rid of one of these guys. You have to get rid of either Shedeur, Flacco, uh, fucking
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett, or Dillion Gabriel, and people already like writing Dillion Gabriel off. Like, yeah, that's the odd man out. Unfortunately, see ya, Dillion Gabriel, and it's like no one is gonna treat Shedeur like a fifth round pick. No one is gonna be like, well, he needs to fight for fucking snaps in camp. So it's gonna be interesting to see how Stefanski juggles that. If he sees like, okay, well, Shedeur honestly is more talented. Let me try to go to him a little bit more. But I just don't think it's a good fit stylistically either, because Stefanski wants a guy that's gonna run the offense and be within the rhythm and within the structure. And Shadeur's a guy that, like we saw his tape, he holds the ball really fucking long. He makes bad decisions because he's trying to make stuff happen. And what's this Brown team? This Browns team is an awful team that is always playing from behind. And it's great when you have Jameis Winston out there just like gunslinging it. But if you have Shedeur out there trying to make a touch, trying to, score 21 on every single play, then I don't see it really going well.
See, I think that's where you and I differ on this. I think that this stylistically is a great fit. I think Shedeur really fits in with what they can do on offense, and I think that what they're doing, what they've built, even just in this draft, I think it fits around him. Drafting the two running backs, drafting Harold Fanning to go with David Njoku. I think that the Stefanski offense fits what he can do, which he doesn't have to be the most mobile quarterback, but just getting out and playing a little bit more West Coast. I think that all fits into what Shedeur does. And I think that him holding the ball was a bad habit that he needs to get out of. But I think that was out of necessity in everywhere that he's gone before, because they didn't have the top tier D1 talent that they had, at any other school. I mean, I think he was fighting an uphill battle. And so I think how much of it is, can you break that bad habit? And also how much of it is like, can we fit into the offense? Can we dump it down to one of these two great tight ends? Can we make sure to have these reads? And I think that honestly, he is a better processor of the game than Dillion Gabriel. So I think he automatically becomes QB1. If I'm going to be on, I'm not impressed with Kenny Pickett. And I think Joe Flacco is probably going to be the starter day one. But eventually it's going to get passed. I mean, we've seen Joe Flacco. He can't put together an entire season.
But how long could you call it a bad habit until we're like, this is just who he is? Even if it's a matter just of circumstance that he had to play that way, that's the only way he's played. That's the only way he's known how to play, is with his back against the wall and trying to make shit happen and holding the ball too long and having ugly turnovers. And like, yes, it's led to some highlight plays, but it ultimately didn't lead to wins. They weren't a successful team. I mean, they were good last year. They got ranked, but they didn't even win a conference. So I don't know. He didn't even perform. We didn't see him perform at the top level against even the Big Ten or SEC level ball. And now he's supposed to come in here without the most arm talent and just show out and carry this team. Like I don't believe it. And he leans more towards Deshaun Watson play style than Joe Flacco. And we've seen what Deshaun Watson was in this offense. And we've seen Joe Flacco or a player like him. This offense is great when you have a quarterback who can put it downfield and be accurate downfield. So I just don't think he has the arm for it.
We've seen the ghost of Deshaun Watson. We've seen a guy who wears a Deshaun Watson jersey but doesn't play like past Deshaun Watson. I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, if we're going to be honest, like he is the injuries have decimated what Deshaun Watson was. I mean, let's be honest. You know what I mean? Uh, so I'm not too worried about that. I think that he does fit that style of offense. I think I was even saying before, like I would have loved him to go to the 49ers. I would have loved him to go to the Packers and LaFleur. I think that he fits that style really well. And I don't think that he needs to bomb it every series. I think that he can dink and dunk his way to success.
I think I would have loved him in Philly. I would have loved him in Kansas City. I would have loved him in San Francisco. But now going here and drops down to the fifth round, throws a big birthday bash with millions of dollars hanging out. Like I don't want my fifth round four string quarterback with all of this going on off the field.
I mean, did you see? Okay, so Boomer Esiason said that multiple owners crossed them off the board because of what they did pre-draft. But also, they didn't meet with that many teams, so it had to have been like GMs talking, right? And talking to one another, front offices, and things like that. I think ultimately what it comes down to is when you push against the status quo pushes back against you. And I think this was, I'm not saying it's some like big conspiracy like everyone else is saying, but I am saying that they did want to see him struggle. Like the front offices and GMs did want him to fall and hopefully get humbled. And the fact that he still isn't as humbled as they would expect, I love it. I think like realistically, I would turn this from like hey, you know what? I could go back into my shell, or I could go out and be the guy that I've always been. And if he's gonna go out and do that, I love it. And I think that he's never shown any like backing down from the spotlight. If you look at even when they're getting clowned the first year at Colorado, he showed up in and out and he was ready to go. Again, in a team that really they didn't have that much talent, he was ready to show and get their ass kicked. Last year, they went and they were still very underutilized as far as talent, and they still showed out and had great wins. I think that you've got a guy that is very resilient, and I think that he is going to overcome this draft debacle and that he is going to put on a show.
I gotta strongly disagree that it was. I'm sure there was a level of GMs talking and like them getting a narrative in their head of what Shedeur was with the interview process and everything. But I got to put it more so on Shedeur and his camp of them just jumping the shark of what teams thought about them, how high he was going to go in the draft. He basically thought, oh, I have top five in the bag, and just said fuck off to the rest of the league. And like that's on him. That's not on these teams for not meeting with him. That's on Shedeur for being so arrogant that he's like, well, I'm not going to meet with the other teams. I mean, we've seen number one picks go through the whole process and talk to a bunch of different teams just in case. Like, you never know what's going to happen until it came down to the very end. Cam Ward met with the Giants and he's meeting with other teams, even though it was pretty solidified that he was going to be the number one pick. So I put that more on him. And I don't think it's this like big conspiracy where everyone's like, oh, fuck Shedeur. We want to make sure that he looks bad. I think it was partly the GMs and the teams being like, yeah, we don't want to touch this, but it has to fall on Shedeur at the end of the day and Prime for building it this way and building this narrative. If he still came in that arrogant and met with like the Seahawks, I feel like the Seahawks would have felt good taking him, but
Yeah.
he just didn't get anyone the opportunity to, change the narrative about himself.
Yeah, I also do think that if you're looking at your board and let's say worst case scenario, everyone had him at the 20th position. You know what I mean? 20th guy on the board on their board. If we get to pick 80, pick 90, are you not looking at it and being like, yeah, let's take a flyer? Like that's kind of ridiculous.
I mean, if you don't know anything about him, and
Well,
you
you've watched the tape. What the fuck else are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? That's yeah.
and you've already had his dad be like, well, yeah, I'm gonna control certain teams where he doesn't go, and then, I mean, if you also are like a young coach, or you're in an unstable situation, Dion has literally said that he wants to coach his son in the NFL, and you're gonna hear those chirps if you were not a successful team this first season, even the second season, you're gonna hear those chirps.
Yeah, and let's kind of get to that. I mean, realistically, I think we're both in agreement here that the Browns owner stepped in and did this deal, right? Are
Yeah,
we both of that opinion that
no, he definitely.
that's happened?
I feel like they pushed up Dillion Gabriel on their board to draft him in the third round, so they can be like, okay, we don't got to hear this fucking Shedeur Sanders talk anymore from Jimmy Haslam. But the more that he fell, the more Haslam was like, he's still there. Let's go get him. He's still there. Let's go. And he just forced their hand.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Andrew Barry talk about it after day 2, he was like, okay, why'd you guys go Dylan Gabriel? And sometimes it's really more about fit. It's we wish him nothing but the best, but honestly, we have to do what's best for our team. And then the day after they draft him, he says that the day after they have to draft Shedeur, and it's like everyone looks like they're not happy to do it. They say afterwards, oh, there was just too much talent. We had to take him. Honestly, if you're Stefanski, you have to be looking over your shoulder, because if you do not have a good year this year, you're probably out. And depending how things go at Colorado, Coach Prime could step in. And that is already a bridge built because of Haslam.
Yeah, it was definitely, and I'm thinking, how successful is he even set up to be when your coach and GM didn't want you there in the first place? So is Stefanski gonna even give him a shot? Is he gonna give him reps, or is he gonna just keep him pushed down the depth chart and be like, well, we could practice squad him, or he might not even make the roster? Like, I don't foresee that happening, because Jimmy Haslam's gonna be like, fuck no, keep him on the roster. We're gonna sell some jerseys. But that's leading to more and more problems now, because you have your head coach who is like, I'm gonna refuse to play this guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go through Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, and then fucking Dillion Gabriel, who I thought could have went undrafted in my eyes, and before I go to Shedeur. But you're gonna be hearing it every week. Every week he's gonna be hearing it.
Yeah. And again, they had to trade up in the draft ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles. It was rumored that the Eagles were going to take Shedeur Sanders with that pick. I think that would have been a great spot for him.
Yeah.
I think that's low pressure. That's learning from great coaches, a great guy, and someone who is a huge role model for the quarterback position, not just because of the adversity that he's faced in college, but his ability to continue to build and become an elite quarterback. Jalen Hurts would have been an excellent mentor for Shedeur Sanders. And I think it sucks that he wasn't able to go there.
I mean, we can speculate all we want. We can say this and that we think about Shedeur. At the end of the day, the league told us how they felt about him. If he was such a talented prospect, and everyone really pictured him to be a starting caliber quarterback, he would have got drafted sooner. Like, period, end of story. But we saw repeatedly the Browns pass on him a lot of times. The Raiders pass on him. The Saints went with a 26-year-old quarterback who spent 7 years in college and was hurt all the time. They went with that guy. The Seahawks could have, kept him in the program and built him up, but they decided to go with Jalen Milroe. There's all these teams. The Steelers decided to wait till Will Howard was there. All these teams could have took a shot on him if they felt like, listen, if I don't take this guy, I'm going to look stupid in my career, because he's gonna make me look dumb on the other side of the field. And they didn't feel that way. They felt like, well, whatever. He's just gonna be another quarterback. So let's go get a different guy that we like better.
Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm excited to see how this Cleveland thing plays out. It's going to be good television regardless because he's such a big name and Stefanski's name was already on the chopping block. I would have loved to see Shedeur go to Jacksonville to play with Travis Hunter and get Trevor Lawrence up out of there because I'm a Trevor Lawrence hater. Or I would have loved to see the Giants take him instead of Jackson Dart because New York, Malik Neighbors, kind of perfect situation for him.
I don't think it was this huge conspiracy. I think that he should have went higher, and ultimately, it's going to be up to him. And he still does have a good chance of being QB1 at some point during this season. So very excited for it, and we'll see how it ends up playing out.
And fuck Jack Solbrick.
Yeah, loser.
All right, bye.
Later.